Hey Basil. Now, the proper response to your video would be to talk about how having a chronically ill father and having to drop him off at the hospital a couple times throughout my life has affected the way I view him as a person, but I haven't been through enough therapy to process that, so instead we're going to talk about video games. I have a concerningly large amount of Steam games, the majority of which I've only played for anywhere from a few hours to just a few minutes, and for over 100 of them, not at all. So one of my goals for 2021 was to start working through my backlog with the end goal of beating more games than I buy. And I did alright. I beat 81 games, but I bought 74, not as good as I was hoping, but still better than any previous year. So is the lesson here that I should buy fewer games? Of course not. The lesson here is that I should be playing more games to completion. This is a very healthy mindset that won't harm my wallet or my productivity in any way. My original plan was to make a video about every single game I beat in 2021, but that seemed a little unfeasible. After writing and polishing the script, it came out to be around 15 pages, which would be around 40 minutes of video. No thank you. But then I realized that half of the script involved me talking about games I really don't care about, so instead, allow me to present the most interesting games I played in 2021. Alright, so the first game that I completed in 2021 that I consider worth talking about is Superliminal. I beat the game for the first time after I got it as a Christmas gift, but I've beaten it several times since and gotten all the achievements, including the tough speedrun achievements. It is one of many pieces of evidence I use for cementing video games' place as the most versatile art medium, and I still think about it at least once a week. This, like many of my other favorite games, utilizes player perspective as a gameplay mechanic. And I've never seen a game so short with such a big concept explored so thoroughly. Next up, The Messenger. This is a bit of a cheat. I had already beaten this game a couple years beforehand, but this playthrough was dedicated to preparing myself for the free Picnic Panic DLC, which is a fine addition to an already fantastic game. If you're interested just based on what I'm showing you, please buy this game without looking up anything else. This game has 3 holy crap moments hidden in it that made my first playthrough one of my most memorable gaming experiences ever. You know how sometimes when you watch a really good movie for the first time, you're kind of sad at the end, grieving the fact that you will never see this movie for the first time again? That's how I felt after beating The Messenger. And speaking of games that make you grieve their first playthrough and use player perspective as a gameplay mechanic, One Shot. I beat this game 3 times in one day. I've never played a game that is both first person and third person before, and the little tricks it uses throughout its runtime might make this my game of the year, but I don't know, I haven't finished making the video yet. The tagline, "The world knows you exist," is perfect for this game, and is just the right amount of vague to make the game's surprises still hit. I would say more, but, well, I already played this with you, Basil. Anyway, enough positive. The Pedestrian. The Pedestrian is an extremely beautiful and compelling 2.5 hours of gameplay, but the good news is that 2 hours and 15 minutes of that are great. The developers get a lot of mileage out of their concept and keep introducing new ideas and items to stretch out possibilities while still adhering to its inherent limitations. The last bit of the game was kind of abrupt. They introduce a whole new gameplay mechanic, you do 1 or 2 puzzles with it, and then the game ends. Why not keep going? This is exacerbated by the fact that the game is really expensive for a 2D puzzle platformer, and the reason that it's expensive, the gorgeous environment painstakingly rendered in 3D with no way for you to properly explore it, seems kind of unnecessary. There were a lot of moments where I got distracted by the scenery and stopped working on the puzzle, but there were an equal amount of moments near the end of the game where I was so laser focused on the puzzle that I didn't even look at the surroundings. I get that the scenery is here to keep you from being bored of looking at a stick figure run around for 2 hours, but it is purely for decoration. There is very rarely any actual interaction with the world, and most of the time it comes in the form of a door opening so the floating camera can get through and keep following you. I'm divided over this game. One half of me was so enamored with the scenery and interesting puzzles for the whole runtime, but The other half of me was constantly hyper-aware of where my $20 were going, wondering if I would get the same experience playing a free Flash game while looking at pictures of a city on my phone. Putt-Putt enters the race. This is a serious video. I played this on a Discord call with a few friends. It's super fun to play that way. I never played these games as a kid, so there's no nostalgia or anything, but I still had a good time ascribing adult logic to this game about a kid who was the only one doing anything in this entire town, oblivious to how he is being used. I played the game again at a 2022 New Year's party, and I had just as much fun the second time. And now, the reason I made this video. The longing, or rather, the longing, I don't know why the colons are there. I have never been so enraptured by a game before, and also been so alone in understanding it. Every friend that I talk to about this game thinks that I'm pulling a prank when I say that this is the most interesting game I've ever played. Admittedly, the elevator pitch does not bode well for the level of fun you'll experience. You play a creature called the Shade, whose job is to wake up a sleeping god after 400 days of real time. In real life. So one way to beat this game is to open it, watch the opening cutscene, close the game, wait 400 days, open it, and win. But wouldn't that be kind of boring? Wouldn't your Shade get very lonely? So your actual goal is to make the Shade's life not incredibly boring and to find some measure of self-worth outside of being a servant to this god. There are some wrinkles, of course. This game is slow, and to be frank, it's not fun. This is not an enjoyable experience. This is your walking speed. Also, the map is huge. Some doors take hours to open, some moss takes a literal month to grow, and there's one event that takes place after a full year. The most egregious thing is this one stupid-ass door. It appears in a random location every 24 hours for 1 minute. You're supposed to go in, take what's inside, and leave before the door disappears, but the Shade is so incredibly lethargic that if you aren't nearly perfect with your movement, you cannot pick up every item without the door disappearing behind you, which is exactly what happened to me. So I had to wait exactly 24 hours in real time and open the door at the exact same time the next day to escape. I had to set an alarm on my phone. I love this game. So how did I beat it in a month if there's a 400-day time limit? Well, the more you explore the cave, the more books and paintings and chalk and coal and items you'll find. With those items, you are able to decorate your hideout, and the more your Shade enjoys spending time in your hideout, the faster time passes in the hideout. There's also a few secrets to find that might change the way you finish this game, but I'll leave that for you to find. This game is the only idle game I've ever gotten actual deep personal enjoyment from. Instead of watching a number go up, I'm watching my Shade become more and more contented and self-confident. I enjoyed this game in a spiritual sense, which is bizarre for a game that's technically in the same genre as Tangerine Tycoon. Anyway, enough feelings. Next game, Demon Crawl. This is a roguelike minesweeper game with items and enemies and scrying and ascension and bombs and shops and bosses. There are so many mechanics and items that you find something new just about every time you play, and you'll be playing it a lot because this game is hard if you're not careful. There is nothing in place keeping most of these maps from being actually impossible without guessing, the dreaded 50-50 in Minesweeper, so unless you are keeping healthy track of your items and spending money in the right places to have ways of removing those guesses, there's a chance your run could die even if you make the best decision possible. This does make the one lucky run where you make it to the end with an absolutely stacked set of items that makes the final boss a cakewalk feel, I don't know, a little unearned. When I beat the game, I killed the final boss, and I did it in one hit. You're not supposed to do that. Sure, I played well, but I played just as well as I did the last couple times, and will the next couple times. I just happened to have the right items available to me. Next, Pony Island. It's a super lighthearted, fun, simple game with no demonic messaging or purgatory plot at all. It's a clean and enjoyable couple of hours. This game goes hard, but achievement hunting requires you to either have a guide or operate with such an incredible level of preciseness and specificity that you don't have fun. They are so difficult to find that I doubt they expected any one person to find all of them, instead taking advantage of the community that would form around the game to find all its secrets. Which, hey, guess what? Motif, player perspective as a gameplay mechanic, or rather in this case, player's perspective. I also have both of the more recent games from this developer, The Hex and Inscription, both of which I have already beaten in 2022 and will be in a future video, and I've really enjoyed both of them. Hexseed is a hexagonal Minesweeper game, okay, I have a type, with thousands of well-crafted levels for the low price of a $10 DLC. Much like how the Tetris effect works, this game has existed in the back of my mind since I bought it, and opening the game every month to play the 100-odd new levels has been a welcome habit. It's absolutely worth purchasing, but since there's so much DLC out already, take your time and don't burn yourself out on it. Fez, a fantastic indie platformer that has its own language? That's still wild to me, and not what I was expecting when I bought this game so many years ago. The way I played this game was a little weird. It was June 18th in a hotel room with all my belongings during a big move, and I finally decided to finish the game, solve all the puzzles I could, look up how to understand the rest, solve all the puzzles I could, then look up the rest. I said this earlier, but I feel that a game like this was designed to be a communal effort, something only an indie game could allow. I think it's no coincidence that the first area of the game is filled with people who look like your character giving you tips. And that's every interesting game I beat in 2021. In the first half of 2021, I decided to be nice to myself and not upload a 20+ minute video, instead splitting it into 2 parts. The second part will come out, I don't know, whenever I don't have an idea. I think you can tell by the way I talk about these games that I love achievement hunting and the act of completing everything a game has to offer. That's the reason I rarely touch multiplayer games or MMORPGs, because there's not really a defined end to it. This may be feeding into a larger problem of seeing video games as work to be completed, and I'm not helping that by resigning myself to making a series of videos about the topic, but you aren't my therapist, so you don't get to hear about that. Bye!